Well, welcome to another episode of Business and Sequins. And I'm so excited. Oh my gosh, I got to room with this lady in June 2021, which was this year, over in Australia when we went over to a business retreat and we were roommates. And oh my goodness, she truly is one of my favorite people. So I'm so excited to welcome you, Glin, to the show. Oh my gosh, I wish we're doing this via Zoom, this interview via Zoom. So for any of our listeners, she's not in the room with me, but if she was, I would hug her so much. So via Zoom right now, I'm giving her a virtual hug. Oh, Glin.
Yay.
Hello, welcome to Business and Sequins.
Thank you, beautiful Jo. I am so excited to be on this show. Oh my God. And rooming with you is so much fun. So I know even with this virtual environment, you're going to make me giggle and laugh. And it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
I do love Glin because when we met in Australia at the retreat on the very first day, we went out, we had a nice dinner and a nice drink, and we said, we'll go for a few drinks tonight, but then we'll just keep it kind of low key. And I think that night we didn't get home till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and we'd had a fair bit to drink. And then the next morning we met each other in the kitchen when we were having a cup of coffee, and we both looked at each other and said, we can't keep this up. We have to, we've
got to be sensible.
We've got to be sensible. We cannot drink tonight. We need to be alert for this retreat and for everything that we're learning during the day. So we cannot drink too much. And I think it was maybe like 1:30 in the morning that night after we'd had a few drinks that we just both looked at each other and just said, we're not being very responsible.
I think you're a bad influence, because the way I look at it is life is for living. It's about fun, and we can try and be sensible. And I do my best to be sensible most of the time. But usually when I'm in the company of an energetic, beautiful, sparkly person like you, like I am more than happy to go rogue and just go with it. So it was a very boozy retreat, but lots of fun. And I have to say, Jo, some of the most greatest memories of the laughter that we had. And yes, thank you.
I know when I look,
magical time.
I know when I look back on that retreat, I just think, gosh, it was just so much fun. And so I've not belly laughed like that in such a long time, but so much fun. But thank you so much for coming on the show. And I've done your intro. I've told the listeners a bit about your background, but in your own words, Glin, do you want to just tell the listeners a bit about your journey in business and personal life?
Yeah, it's insane. I look at my life now, we're 2021, and I definitely would not have said at this point in my life that I'd be sitting as a divorced, single, childless puppy mama running her own business and also consulting for a leading world leading negotiation consultancy. And it is, I have to say, where life takes you is very unpredictable. So my journey started in the UK. I had a career in finance, so that was where I started my journey in my early 20s. So qualified accountant by background, worked for large global consumer goods businesses, so companies like Hewlett-Packard, General Electric, Coca Cola, and then joined a global conglomerate called Associated British Foods, and they owned businesses like George Weston Foods here in Australia, Twinings Tea company, Pataks, an Indian curry sauce brand, lots of other branded food businesses, as well as agricultural businesses and retail businesses. So a big company background, headed up finance functions in those businesses, had the opportunity to really flex my understanding of myself through my commercial acumen. And what I loved about finance was the strategic thinking, the big picture, growing businesses, understanding what people did to make businesses grow, and understanding human behavior in that aspect. What I didn't love about finance was budgeting, forecasting, the monthly routine, the the governance, the audit side, all of what felt like it was more control, transactional, not the creative side of finance. And internally, whilst I knew something didn't connect with it, I didn't really know what it was. I couldn't really put my finger on it. I just thought, okay, well, I've chosen a career now. That's the path that I need to go on. And it was only in 2014 when my year started with me being pregnant, and I was married, and I thought I was going to have the most magical year. We'd been trying for a family for some time, and unfortunately I miscarried early on into the pregnancy, and that sent both me and my husband at the time into this self-reflection mode around where were we going, what was happening, how did we feel about this journey. And long story short, ended up separating and finding myself at the end of 2014 with no baby, no husband, facing single life, and wondering what the heck I was going to do. And it was in those moments where you then start really looking at what's really important to you. And I felt like I wanted to create something that allowed me to feel like I was moving forward in my life and not staying stagnant and not looking back with this sense of failure of where has my life come to and what have I accomplished or what have I made of it. And I found myself then making a decision with the guidance of my mum and my sister helping me get clear on what I wanted, and making a decision to move out to Australia. So I walked into the office when I was working with Twinings at the time, told my group CFO that I needed him to help me find a job in Australia, and I'd give him 12 months to get me here. And it didn't take 12 months. They helped me out, found an internal opportunity for heading up the finance function for the Pataks curry sauce business here in Australia. And then I was out living here by the end of June. I came out in 2015, in June 2015. So it happened really quickly. Visas sorted, stuff packed up, moved my entire life over. And I think when you do make those big decisions in life, like that journey of self-discovery had been sparked. It was this sense of, oh, there's greater meaning, there's greater connection I've got to now find, because I was on this, I guess, trajectory of get married, have a good job, have kids, was like this, buy a big house, have nice cars, this wealth trajectory really basically dictated by what culture around me was saying that you should have. And then when I got to Australia, suddenly there were no rules for me. I'd found myself kind of going, okay, who am I? I'm in this new environment, starting my life over in my mid-30s in a new country, realizing that I felt disconnected to finance because it didn't matter to me anymore in the same way I thought it once did. And then started exploring myself, getting clearer on who I am, and then decided to make the big decision three years into being in Australia to leave my corporate career entirely and start a new chapter in my life, executive coaching and helping female leaders basically claim their seat at the table, to find their own voice and to do what makes their heart sing. Because I think I had realized that I hadn't been doing what made my heart sing, and I didn't know how to find what made my heart sing. And now, having done that for myself, I wanted to be able to share that journey with others. And 3 years in coaching, COVID had a massive impact on face-to-face leadership programs that I was running. So I pivoted last year into the online course space, running an 8-week program now called Unstoppable Woman. And I also consult with a world-leading negotiation consultancy firm, which again is a new chapter as well in my skill set. So I've been able to bring my skill set of finance and commercial thinking, human behavior and performance, a real passion for people, and bringing all of that together to essentially deliver negotiation training programs, as well as helping female leaders develop their self-leadership. So that's me in a nutshell. No, still single. haven't found an Aussie man that quite ticks all the boxes yet, and I've found myself a puppy to be a mama too. So yeah, I'm a mum in a way that I never imagined that I would be, doing life solo in a way that I didn't imagine at this point in my life, doing a career that I never imagined that I would have the opportunity to experience, and I'm just loving what life has brought. It's challenging and it has its lows, but for the most part, I would say, because I've dropped to my heart, I feel so connected. I feel so connected to the chaos, and yeah, love all of it, which is great.
You're it's such a journey, such a huge journey for you to go from, being married, on the other side of the world, to just deciding, that's it, I'm going to pack up. That is so courageous for you to move to the other side of the world with no one, by yourself, at a time in your life when you were feeling, probably low.
Yeah.
I mean, where does
lost.
Lost. Yeah. Where do you think, it takes a huge amount of courage, but then it takes even more courage to actually act and actually follow through? Because you could easily have just thought, oh yeah, I would like to move to the other side of the world, but never actually spark it. And where does the courage come from, Glin?
My mum. Yeah, definitely my mum. My mum and dad split up when I was 3 years old, and my mum and dad, when they'd met, they'd had an arranged marriage. So both my parents were born in India, but my dad grew up in England. And my mum came across from India for an arranged marriage with my dad. She'd never met him, so she'd trusted that her family had made the right choice in terms of her matching. And she first got shown a photo of him at Heathrow Airport when she landed, having already committed to the marriage. So I kind of think of what she went through to trust her family, and the courage she had to get on a plane and come to England from India to get married to someone she'd never met. The relationship lasted 3 to 4 years. Myself and my sister came into the world, and when they separated, my mum was essentially left on her own to bring up myself, who was 3 at the time, my sister, who was 1, on her own, but also not speaking the language. So she had never been to school beyond the age of 12, because in India, family was really big, but the women in the relationships at the time were all focused on actually bringing the order to the home. So it was a farming family, and she dropped out of school to essentially look after the family and bring them up. So she didn't speak English. And I look at what she went through to bring up 2 daughters in a foreign country to the one that she had been brought up in, not speaking English. And she managed to get us raised, educated. She bought her own home. She kept us safe. She loved us. And she never once ever gave me the indication that I couldn't create a life for myself, even when things got tough. And I think that's where it comes from. I just think my start in life, whilst it's challenging, and I didn't expect my marriage to end either, and I certainly had my own sort of heartache around that journey. But I think because my mum has always had this ridiculous smile on her face, and no matter how hard things have got, she's been able to laugh, smile, and just connect with being present. And I just thought, well, when my marriage ended, it wasn't what I wanted, but through my mum's journey and her learnings, I thought, well, I can sit here and wallow, or I can go and create a life that I want to create. And I was lucky in that my relationship with my ex-husband was sound, that we're still great friends, we're still connected. So there was never any animosity, there was never any sense of mistrust. The trust was never broken in our relationship. So I think in that regard, having that strength in that relationship, still continuing, either going from being partners in life to back to being friends again, it was just like, okay, there's a transition here. But certainly that courage to go, right, what can I make for myself, came from my mum, for sure.
She sounds like an incredible woman.
Yeah, she is. She's my rock. Yeah, I definitely don't know how I would have had just the fortitude that I needed without her just unwavering support. She has been, and my sister too, like they've both been this unwavering force behind me. It's kind of like we joked when we were growing up that we were the three amigos. It was like, we're the three amigos. And I'm like, yeah, I was like, now we're just like three older women aging together, because my mum never remarried. I'm solo, my sister's solo. I'm like, oh my God, what is going on? Got three very strong, independent women doing life. But all of us look really happy. So I guess we're breaking the conventions of you need to have a relationship to be whole. And I know that's certainly work I've had to acknowledge in myself. And I just thought, right, okay, if I can lean in and just create a life where I have fun, whilst it doesn't look like I had hoped or dreamed of, but just embrace the messiness that has presented itself and have some fun with it.
I love that. Embrace the messiness. I love it. And which is what you definitely did in order to, come through what you have, and then coming out the other end too, feeling like you are now, where you've got, happy and you're doing what you want to do with your business and with life.
Yeah.
And, and a puppy, who doesn't want a puppy? Like, who doesn't get love, their bucket filled from a puppy?
He is the best. It's so good. It is a bit creepy though. I do pretend like he's a baby sometimes. So
you have said that out loud now.
I have said that. I like pick him up and I have his little head over my shoulder and I pretend I'm sort of like, rocking him like I would do a baby. And I'm like, if anyone was watching this, they'd think you are a bit creepy. But it's just really nice just to have like his heartbeat next to mine and just have those cuddles. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to get my fill in a different way. And the great thing is he sleeps through the night, has done from the moment the moment I got him. His potty training only lasted 3 months, and frankly, like, he's a breeze. I'm thinking, God, yeah, here's all this time I was thinking, oh my God, am I ever going to be a mum? And now I'm like abhorrent.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm abhorrent and it's the best.
So Glin, we've today I've brought you on the show today just to talk about the inner critic, because so many women have this voice in their head that is the inner critic. So I think let's get into it.
Great.
Let's crack it open, let's bust it open, and let's talk inner critic. Why do we have it? What's going on? Where does that voice come from, and why is it so nasty?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I don't know if I know specifically all of the answers, but I know I have my take on it. I look at the world and I think it's weird because everyone's got this inner critic. Like, there isn't a single human that hasn't experienced this inner voice that's either supported or challenged in some way. And I kind of look at it and think there is a part of us that is focused outside of ourselves to look for validation, to look for this sense of, where do I fit in the world? Where do I belong? And when we start looking outside of us to what culture is dictating, what the environment is dictating, we find ourselves feeling like we're less than, because we look different, we sound different, we might have had a different upbringing or a different educational background, different strengths and skills, and then we're comparing ourselves to this environment around us. And in some way, we're trying to find how we fit and look the same. Like, it's almost like we're looking for, where are my people like me? And when we find our people like me, we can start to feel safer and we're feeling okay. And there's that animalistic instinct in us that needs a tribe to feel safe, because our brain hasn't evolved massively from our sort of animal age. And therefore our survival instinct is still very much reliant on, actually, if I need to find my tribe, I can stay safe. And if I therefore need to stay safe, I need to fit. And if I fit, great, because it means I'm safe. But the reality is we are safe in this current environment from I'll say from a physical standpoint. We haven't got saber-toothed tigers chasing us down in this current age, but our brain hasn't evolved to the extent that we as humans have moved forward. So we've still got this part of us that is looking to be safe, and that dominates us in our thinking, because the inner critic comes in kind of challenging our thinking because we're different, and we've made different wrong, because different puts us outside of the environment rather than within the environment of safety. Whereas what I've learned over time is actually our greatest job in our life isn't necessarily about staying safe, whilst that's Maslow will say from a psychological needs perspective, you have to feel safe at a foundational level. And I think that's true at a human point. But when I think about what are we really here to do, is our biggest thing is to stay connected to who we are and what our heart tells us about who we are. And when I think about the inner critic, the reason why we have it is because it's living in our head, it's living in our mind, it's living in our brain. But when we take that journey from our head to our heart, that's where we find the truth. Our heart is very rarely, is never not the cheerleader. I have never had a conversation from my heart that's ever been critical, that's ever been anything other than love, that has ever been anything that has been dismissive of who I am. There's always this sense of, oh, you, just as you are, just as your messy, chaotic self, just as your incoherent versus your coherent state, like all of you is loved when you're in your heart. But when you're in your head, we have these moments where our mind will believe anything we tell it. So 1 minute we'll tell it, yeah, we belong, we fit, we're great, we're awesome. And the next minute we'll look somewhere else and go, oh my God, I must be rubbish. I must not be smart enough. I must not be good enough. And we've lost ourselves because we've started looking outside of us rather than the power we have within. So that's a really long-winded answer to say something that was a really simple question.
No, I love that. I love that. But how do we make that click from our head to our heart, and how do we actually start to look within?
Yeah, good question. I think the first thing is you have to acknowledge when you are being critical of yourself, you are in your head. And I think if you know that inner critic only ever lives in your head, then that's where you live. So if you can see it first and foremost, it's then going, okay, well, how do I move away from it? So I would say awareness absolutely has to be your first step. So notice your feelings, notice your thoughts. So are your feelings strong and in joy and happiness, or are they of fear, anxiety, and discomfort? Because our negative feelings indicate whether we're closer to our inner critic, i.e. in our head, versus the positive feelings that we feel in our heart. So your feelings will be your first step to be aware of. And then what thoughts are you thinking? Secondly, what I would say also is ask yourself a question when you are feeling the inner critic come up. And it's an interesting one. I'll give an example, because I felt this the other day, and it's not to say it doesn't come up. I felt this the other day. And you and I are both part of a community of great women doing great work, and you get to see all of the awesomeness that people achieve. And sometimes I found myself looking, going, oh, wow, like she's done this amazing job. Oh, I don't know if I could ever do that. Oh, what should I do differently to try and make myself better? But it wasn't coming from a place of, oh, like I'm excited and enthused to do something better. It was coming from a place of, oh, I'm now feeling less than, and I'm feeling like I should be filling a hole within me because I've seen someone do something fabulous, right? And I had to just stop myself, because I thought, oh, I've just noticed that didn't feel so good. That feeling that I got just made me feel like I was somewhat disconnected to myself. So I paused and I just took a moment, and I just like literally put my hand on my heart, and I just said, oh, what do you need right now? And literally just was like, I'm listening to you, my heart. What do you need right now? And it literally spoke, not out loud, that would be weird. But it spoke to me, and it just said, you're okay as you are, like you're okay, and you don't necessarily need to do that same thing. What you need to do right now is just to stop, to rest, to be with you, to be happy, and you can do nothing and still be whole. And it was just this moment of going, oh yeah, okay, I don't need that. So I just stopped, allowed myself to sit with it, found myself in my little happy space because I've focused on my feelings. And then from that happy space, you can go, oh, what might I want to create for myself? And suddenly you get all these ideas of what you might want to do to grow yourself, but they're not coming from a place of I'm less than, I'm less than the other person, or I'm less than who I could be. It's coming from a place of, oh, now I'm back in play mode. How can I play? How can I do something that's just fun? It's energetic. I'll challenge myself. But it's coming from my heart, because the energy that I feel now that I'm looking for this new opportunity to grow is very different to how it would have felt if I'd just gone, oh, I've seen someone do something, and now I'm going, oh, I should do something like that because that's amazing. And now I feel like I'm inadequate, and you can start to see where the differences are when you feel inadequate because you don't feel great.
I feel like what you've done too is, there were a couple of things that I was thinking when you were talking there, Glin. One of them to me was that it sounded too like your inner critic comes from a scarcity mindset.
It does.
Whereas your heart comes from an abundance.
It absolutely does. That's spot on, Jo. I couldn't have said it better myself. And it really does, because that scarcity is in a way going, I'm lacking in something, I'm missing something. I was born and I didn't have this special secret magic sauce that someone else has, or I didn't get the looks, I didn't get the smarts, I didn't get the wealth, I didn't get this. And we're all coming from a place of I'm missing something, and therefore I'm looking outside of myself to find it and fill this gap. And what I've realized is actually when you come from your heart, your heart is firstly the number one most used muscle in your entire body, so you're kind of there going, it is keeping you alive, and it is so incredibly powerful. Secondly, it is a source of truth. Like I've never known ever, like asking my heart a question and just sitting with my feelings, for them not to have guided me to where I need to be. And your heart has the positive emotions, it has all of those connections, and yes, it can hurt, but when it hurts, it's often because you've disconnected from it, because you've kind of gone, oh, okay, in heartbreak, for example, if you're feeling pain, it's because you've loved and now you feel like you're lacking in love. So back to that scarcity again, right? Whereas your heart always knows there's love, there's an abundance of love available, and you can continue to love, even if, say, in my example, like my husband's no longer my husband, but I can still have unconditional love. Like I don't need to have that attachment to be able to give from my heart. I can go, okay, I can still love you, I can still love myself and still feel whole when I'm in my heart. And I think you're spot on when you say the main difference between your head and your heart is the scarcity versus the abundance. Like, yeah, there's a reason why people say follow your heart. There's intuition and guidance that is there, that's beyond anything that any logical scientific explanation needs to validate. There's something far greater. And I'm a big believer in science, but also the metaphysical world, where I just think there's a lot of things that we can feel energetically that can't always be explained by just raw facts. It's kind of like there's a mystical element to life and how it unfolds, like you have to believe in sometimes what you can't see in order to trust that you'll be led to where you need to go. And that's what I think my heart will always lead me.
I love it. I love what you've been saying. And one of the things that kind of struck out to me too when you were talking is that we as women are often very busy. We've got, the load of our families. If we've got family, we've got the load of work, we've got the load. We just carry such a mental load.
Yeah.
But while you were talking, one of the things that I loved about what you were saying was taking that moment to stop.
Yeah.
And get in tune with you and to, your heart. Because I think when I know for myself, when the inner critic goes rampant and, just gets bigger and escalates and escalates and escalates, it's when I don't stop and restock what's happening and actually get in tune with my heart. And I find that it I keep going and it just kind of snowballs and just gets louder and bigger and louder, and it doesn't stop. So I love that you've just highlighted that we should stop and just get back in tune and just, look at, who we are and get back in tune with what our heart is saying.
And I think, and I thank you for capturing that, because I think we don't do enough of that pausing. And when you think about pieces of music, right? Music is created because there is silence between the notes. Like, if you can imagine what a complete clusterfuck music would be if there was no space between the notes, like it'd just be noise. There wouldn't be any beauty in the music. There is, chapters on a page but are separated by full stops. Sentences are separated by full stops. There's space between words for things to make sense. And I kind of look at, all of these examples of where there is space. That's what we need to create for ourselves for it to make sense. If we just keep living in our head and in this constant state of doing, and we allow our thoughts to consistently just keep growing and rolling us over, we're not creating that space for our life to have this sense of sense making. And that pause creates that opportunity for it to make sense, for the music to be made, for us to choose very carefully how we want to construct and choreograph the life that we're living. And I think pausing in this current environment where we're busy being busy, and for the most part, when it comes to the inner critic, we're looking outside to the world to say, what is it that we should be busy doing, and what should my life stand for, and what should I be creating? Whereas I was this person, and I kind of liken it to sort of this description that David Brooks, who wrote the book Second Mountain, had said, where like we've got this first mountain that we climb when we're sort of in this state of unconsciousness, but we're letting society tell us we need nice houses, nice cars, we need job titles that are fancy, make money, we need to keep elevating ourselves and getting better and better and better. And sometimes you get to the top, and this happens to a lot of well-paid executive CEOs, that they get there and then there's this emptiness, like, I've made it to the top of this first mountain, I've got all the money that I need, I've got a great house, I've got family, kids, all of the stuff that I think I should have had, but there's something missing. Like, there is something missing, and I feel completely disconnected to myself. And then they sort of find themselves taking the step down the mountain into this valley, what we call the dark valley of the night at times, the dark soul of the night. This experience of, I don't know who I am, where is life going to give me meaning? And then they embark on this journey to the second mountain, which isn't about accolades or achievements from an external world. It's about this deep sense of understanding of who you are and the contribution that you get to make when you step into the truth of who you are. And I think that's what the space provides you with, is that space between choosing a path that allows you to continue to stay unconscious to the journey that you're on. And some people, don't get me wrong, Jo, people can be really happy being unconscious, doing what everyone else does, and that's okay. Like, there's no judgment around that. But I often think the magic comes from when you do pause and you start to question your life and you start to question who you are and what you want, because you start to realize the traps that you fall into when culture's dictating. Like, the amount of people I coach that are miserable in their jobs, all because they followed the culture that said they needed to put all of their kids through private school, have big houses with excessive mortgages, and now they're spending less time with their family than they ever imagined. They're busy, having to make the income to create the life that they thought they should have. And actually all they want is freedom and joy. And I'm like, well, you could have had freedom and joy by making different choices. But if you were in your heart, you'd have made those choices. But because you're in your head, you followed the guidance outside of you rather than within you. So, yeah.
I absolutely love that. Another question that I've got as well is, why does the inner critic have to be so mean?
Why does it have to be mean?
Because, you know, some of the things that I think of that my inner critic has said to me, I would never, ever say to another human being, never. But why is it so mean?
I think it's back to that safety mechanism. It's trying to keep you safe because it thinks you're putting yourself in danger if you step yourself out of your comfort zone.
Is it with like the more you step out, the louder it will be, or is it?
Well, the bigger growth, like if you imagine, if we take it back to our animal instincts and we're going, okay, we're wandering the world and we could be eaten by, we could be eaten as prey by other animals that are dangerous, right?
Yeah.
So we're constantly on heightened alert. We're in fight or flight mode. And we're kind of going, okay, how do I scan my environment? How do I know that I'm safe, right? And you're staying with what you know, you're eating the food that you need to, you've got your instincts, right? Whereas where we are now, we don't have the same physical threats, but what we have is an intellectual threat, right? This intellectual threat in our environments around us, that we're overthinking things, we're trying to find the sense making in our own minds. But every time when you think about and I'll ask this, right? When your inner critic shows up, is it showing up usually when you're trying to do something you've never done before? Is it showing up when you've started to look outside of yourself to what someone else is doing and saying, oh, I'm not doing the same thing, or I don't look the same as them, and therefore there must be something wrong with me? Because in order for me to fit, back to my earlier point, in order for me to fit, I should have this look or personality or way of being. I should have these things that say that I can fit and belong. And then if you're pushing yourself to change, that inner critic's going, oh, hold on a minute, like, yeah, you want all that stuff based on what's outside of you, but what if you fail? What if you don't make it out there? Then you're going to be left exposed, and then you being exposed is going to be under greater threat than if you just stay as you are now. Like, I'm trying to keep you safe, and I'm being mean because you really have to work hard to challenge my meanness. So I never look at, inner critic is there, but I do think it's driven by this mechanism to keep you safe out of harm's way. I don't think it's there to take you off the path that it thinks is right for you. The issue is that your inner critic isn't objective enough. Like, it will believe whatever you tell it. So it's scanning the external environment to understand what's true, rather than knowing your internal environment, which absolutely knows what is true. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too that we don't check it, do we? Our inner critic. We just let it run rampant.
Yeah.
And we don't, I know with myself, through your course that I've done, I have been able to pull it back in.
Yeah.
But I know that it hadn't been pulled in for many, many years. No. And we don't do that, do we?
No. And the easiest way, and like the simple method, is name it first and foremost, so it doesn't become something that's if you identify with it as you, then you're making it really hard to distinguish the fact that it's not you. Like, it's not your heart, it's something separate. It's it's a mind construct, so if you name it, you can give, and I've called mine Nailer, because I'm going, oh, Nailer, I want to nail her, is a nasty piece of work at times. But I know deep down all she's trying to do is keep me safe, because she thinks I'm going to kill myself by doing things that are scary or fail or make a complete tit out myself. So I know she's trying to do the right thing, but she is really mean and she's nasty. And I'm like, right, I'm going to nail her. Like, you're going to be out. But I realize that she only comes up when I'm living in my head. She is silent, like, she's nowhere to be seen when I'm in my heart. And that only comes through a conscious level of awareness and a choosing time to pause and an opportunity to really deepen your understanding of who you are. Because when you do step into your heart, like, one, I see you stepping in your heart, and I see goofy, funny, sparkly, happy, excitable, energetic Jo that brings with her all of her serious business acumen and smarts and the skills that just fires her up, and she knows how to make a meaningful difference. But I see this warmth, I see this truth, I see this energetic sense of she knows who she is. And when you're living in that space of knowing who you truly are, like your heart, it's just infectious from you people are attracted to you, they want to be around you, like you're just a joy. And that's where it is when like we see what people are like when they're in their heads, like, man, it's exhausting. It's exhausting being around people that are constantly questioning themselves and doubting themselves, and
it is, but I was in my head until I worked with you on Unstoppable Women. I was in my head a lot, and I think one of the biggest changes was naming my inner critic. It took her from being in me and in my head to me being somebody physical that I could actually visualize and actually tell that, I'm actually okay, I've got this, so you can go now. I mean, I've named my moaning Myrtle because, she just moans at me all the time. You're not doing this right. But now I feel like we have nicer conversations. She does still raise her head, but the nicer conversations. But I find that I talk nicer to her.
Because you're in your heart, because you know who you are. So when you're in your heart, you can talk nicely because your heart only knows unconditional love. So you don't need like her to be nice back. You're just like, I'm going to love you because I know all you're trying to do is keep me safe. So I'm in my heart and I'm going to have a conversation with you that's encouraging, and you'll soothe yourself down. And it's great. I love that.
I feel like I've really quietened her down a lot, but thanks to you, quite a lot. But Glin, I know that, I've asked you if you've got any tips for any of my listeners who are listening, who have, what you've shared already, I'm sure has been just such a great help anyway. But I know that you said that, you could have a couple of tips as well for any women out there who are struggling, with that inner critic.
So from an inner critic perspective, remember your ego is what's driving it, and your ego lives in your head. So your truth lives in your heart. So first and foremost, if you feel like your inner critic's rampant, just remember it's your ego and you're in your head, and that you want to take the journey to your heart. Secondly, take time to pause, physically put your hand on your heart and say, I love you, I'm listening. And listen for what it tells you. And it sounds wacky, but it works. Like you just get this inner sense of calm and peace, and you kind of just intuitively know where it's guiding you. And you might not get that the first time, but you have to just trust that you sit with it, find somewhere quiet, whether it's a safe spot by the water, on the beach, or in nature, or a nice quiet spot in your home, wherever feels safe to you, just to sit with yourself, put your hand on your heart and say, I love you, I'm listening. What do you need me to know? And it will give you some guidance on what you really need right now. And sometimes that could just be kind, just soothe yourself. It's okay. Like, we've got this. And then the final thing I would say is always be aware of your feelings. If you can be aware of your feelings first and foremost, the inner critic feelings are pretty obvious. They're not going to be great feelings. And then I'd say, once you can see your feelings, just ask, what in this moment could be a better feeling that I could access? Like, what is the one feeling that I can step myself up to that helps me feel like I've just got a better sense of control over what I'm going through right now, rather than not? And I think when you start practicing that, to kind of go, okay, like if I'm feeling despair because my inner critic's going nuts, I'm like, okay, well, what will give me control? What will give me a sense of feeling better? And it sounds weird, but sometimes even stepping up to anger is a step up, because energetically, anger has you feeling more in control than the word despair does. Like, the feelings of despair are like, oh my God, like nothing's going to work. Whereas anger's like, I am so cross right now. Like, you need to just shut up and leave me alone. And sometimes that's okay, because you can just go, right, I've stepped myself up energetically from an emotion, and I've accessed a feeling that might on the surface feel negative, but actually is a better feeling than the one I was feeling. And that's what I'd say is my third tip. Just step yourself up one feeling at a time, and you'll know intuitively what might feel better. And when you've got that sort of method, those three things, just that sense of, am I in my head or in my heart? Can I take a moment to pause and ask myself, my heart, what it needs? And then can I just monitor my feelings? And when I'm feeling a little bit icky, choose one better feeling above it that you think you can access in that moment.
Oh my gosh, I love you so much. I love your wealth of knowledge in this topic so much. You have just shared so much wisdom in such a short amount of time.
Oh, thank you, Jo.
So much wisdom with regards to what we can do. And, I'm really excited because, as I said to the listeners, Glin has got an amazing course called Unstoppable Women that she releases a couple of times a year. I was lucky enough to be on her last intake. I met some incredible women and truly I think it was one of the things that you do in your course, you do a personality report, and I printed it all off and I looked at it and I took it up to my husband and I actually put it on his desk and just said to him, if you truly want to understand your wife, you'll read through this report. And it is absolutely spot on. So if you want to know me, read the report.
Love that.
I just loved it. And I loved your 3 tips as well. And you're going to be a guest expert in the Business and Sequins membership as well.
I cannot wait. I'm so excited. I feel like we're going to have so much fun. Like your members and I'm going to be there right with them, enjoying the journey, because I just feel like we need more of that. We need more of this sparkle in business. I certainly know how lonely it's been doing the journey of business on my own until I joined a mastermind group of my own. And I just think it's one of the most powerful, most giving things that we can do for ourselves, is to create a beautiful community that's honest and open and shares and gives, a wealth of knowledge so that we can lift each other up. And I'm so excited for your program.
So am I. I'm so excited for the membership as well, because that's what I want to do. I want to be a cheerleader. I want to be able to cheerlead women on through business, health and wealth, and just be able to share other women's stories and just share tips and hints and shortcuts and things like that, and just have that community. Because I feel like when I was starting out in business and with children and things like that, those were the 3 kind of pillars that I really wanted. I wish I had nailed back then or had support. And so I want to be that for other women. So I'm so excited, and I'm so excited you're going to be one of the guest experts.
It's so good. I'm so looking forward to it.
Glin, we're going to pop, for any of the listeners, we will pop in the show notes all of the details, and there's all of the how to contact Glin as well if you've got any questions about the show, or if you've got any questions about her course that she's got coming out too. And follow Glin on Instagram. She has some amazing tips and hints and things like that. And I love your whole, you've just done a whole thing on courage, and I've loved all of your posts on courage that you've done as well. And I've loved all of your lives that you've been doing, because you just give such great advice, really practical advice for all women to just, be able to take, find the truth and implement straight away as well. But thank you so much, Glin, for coming on today. Oh, actually, I've almost forgot my two questions that I ask everyone. I'm so excited. I almost forgot. So I have got 2 questions that I like to ask. So if you could pick a colour of a sequin that best describes your personality, what colour would it be?
I would have to say it's probably navy. Navy is like my favorite color, but a sparkly navy would be just gorgeous. And the reason why I say that is it kind of reminds me of like the color of the ocean, the deepness of the ocean. I am a deep and meaningful and connected person. For a long time, I felt like I needed to be something more, until I realized that I just needed to love all of my depth and all of what I offer. So navy with some hints of turquoise sparkle, as you see the sunshine glisten on the ocean. That would be my color.
That it describes you to a T. Describes you to a T. And then also too, on the sequin scale of 1 to 10, 1 being that you're finding it hard to pull yourself out of bed in the morning, or 10 being that you're dropping sequins and glitter everywhere you go. Where do you currently see yourself on the sequin scale?
I would say somewhere between 9 and 10. And I think the only reason it's not a 10 is because we're in lockdown and I am feeling like I'm missing my family in the UK. And there's that little niggle in my mind of not knowing when the borders will open and when I'll be able to see them again. So I am definitely, my heart's feeling, a longing to have my mum's food and to give her a huge hug and to see my sister and give her a huge hug. And so, yeah, but I would say still between like a 9 and 10, because life's magical. Like, you have to make the most of what you've got. And I certainly feel like whilst it's a roller coaster, like I'm not always feeling the vibe that I want to be feeling, and I let that, let those emotions be felt, and it's okay. But I would say 99% of the time I'm living in that 9 to 10, which is just awesome. I love that in fact you called it a sequin scale as well. I want one. I want a sequin scale.
Yeah, I love you so much, Glin. Thank you so much. I'm sure that the listeners have got just so much value out of it, but thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you for having me, and I can't wait to catch up and give you a big, beautiful hug.
I know.
Thank you.
Me too. Okay, take care.